Emily, welcome to the podcast. It's really good having you here.
Thank you so much. Such a pleasure and an honor to be with you today, Darren.
All right, Emily, so congratulations. This is your debut book, Under His Wings, How Faith on the Front Lines Has Protected American Troops. What a book. I read it last night. The stories are just remarkable, Emily. Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm curious, there are layers of complexity to the book. I sort of say there's a few books in one. Military history, my family's legacy, these incredible stories of faith on the front lines. And my question is, what stuck out to you as a reader? Because now I finally get to hear from someone who read it, and especially on this platform, what impacted you? What stayed with you after you read it?
Yeah, a couple things was just the way you talk about your faith also jumped out at me, and also how faith played such a role for these service members in different ways. Some very calls or voices they heard, God's voice in the middle of combat. Others are more soft ways, but probably what jumped out at me, Emily, was the humility that these service members had, not only for themselves but also their faith, and how they're willing to do what I think most normal people, I'm counting myself as that, would be unwilling to do. It's just, the stories are just inspiring, and I get chills thinking about it. Tim Karcher, stories World War I, Global War on Terror. So that would be, for me, it's the humility with which these service members gave it all and continue to.
Yeah, they're really humble heroes, and they're heroes of faith, and they're heroes of war, although they would never call themselves that. And to me, it sort of underscores the ordinary, extraordinary service of our military men and women and their families, that whatever they are called to do, they fulfill. They fulfill that duty and that purpose without questioning it. And you look back and you can Monday morning quarterback and appreciate the colossal lift that these people engaged in. But at the time, they say, I did it because I had to. I did it for my brother,
right.
Or these reasons. And I agree with you that their humility is humbling for me to serve as a witness for. And, some of them say, oh, no, just call me Tim. Don't call me by my rank. They're so personable and, again, ordinary, extraordinary.
No doubt. Well, one of those individuals was Colonel Tim Karcher, and I would love to ask you about him. He sounds like an amazing man, but in 2009, you were in Sadr City. What in the world were you doing in Sadr City in 2009?
Right. So at the time, I was an NFL cheerleader for the then Oakland Raiders, and I had the honor of going on a USO tour, 2 weeks in country to Kuwait and Iraq. And there were 5 of us girls that went, and on the list of forward operating bases and joint stations to go to. And, we went to the main places, Camp Liberty and Victory, so Baghdad, right, and Saddam's palaces that were converted to use for American and Allied service. But we went to those forward operating bases, which was really important to us to show in the ambassadorial way that we brought with us the support of the American people and the goodwill. And we're doing what we were exactly there to do, which was to boost morale and to show the soldiers that we never forgot them and that we were supporting them and praying for them 24 hours a day. And I bring that up because when the itinerary, comes through and people around us are, okay, next is Sadr City. You're going where? Like, no one believed. And we didn't know location from anything, so we were like, what's Sadr City? And even the guys there in Sadr City had no idea. They were like, there is no way NFL cheerleaders are coming here. That has to be a mistake. It was sort of thick in the cities of Baghdad, a very urban joint security station, small and very, very dangerous. Very dangerous. And we arrived on time. Their landing zone, by the way, was the middle of a essentially highway. So the guys would come out from the station, secure the highway, meaning stop all the cars. The helicopter would land, and then we would run across the highway into the gates in our Raiderette uniforms, which is hysterical. Because I can't imagine what people in the cars were thinking as we ran by.
Oh, I'd love to see that.
Totally. And maybe with tracksuits on, but clearly, running with palms. And so we get there, and Colonel Karcher's in charge, and he's awesome. He's so kind, and we hang out with the guys. We do we have our structured day and itinerary. And then what happens is our exit Black Hawk, which is how we were driven around, was diverted for a medevac, a very noble and important cause. So we were effectively stranded in Sadr City. And
my.
as Colonel Karcher tells it, he's like, my blood pressure went through the roof. Oh my gosh. Like, he was like, it was bad enough, no offense, that you guys were coming. You girls were coming. And he's like, and then that you were stranded here. And I remember him telling us, he said, I have 3 daughters at home, and I am not going to sleep, and I'm not going to rest until I get you girls safely out of here. Because the reality was there in Baghdad that, it's not an airport where your plane's coming in at 4. And with Blackhawks being diverted for medevacs, that could mean anything. That could take a long time. There can be dust storms and wind and all the things that factor into whether you can, in fact, secure a flight for 5 cheerleaders stranded at a base in the middle of Sadr City.
That's so good, so great.
It's like hilarious. So he his whole side of the story is hilarious too, because he was like, oh my gosh, like, find sleeping bags for these girls, we have to find beds for them. Oh my God. He was like, we didn't even have blankets, like, we didn't know what to do. And he says, again, I heard all this later, that he was like, I was shocked because you guys didn't, I expected you to go inside and sort of like hide out or at least go to sleep. And he's like, you didn't. I'm like, of course not. We were there to hang out with the soldiers. We were there to spend time with them. And for us, we liked that so much better anyway. We liked the normal hangout time, getting to know the soldiers over a performance anyway. Nightly performances are super fun and have their own entertainment value, but the connection with the soldiers is what's most important. So we spent all night there in the courtyard and outside, just hanging out with the soldiers, and we called it the Sadr City Slumber Party. We never went to
fantastic.
sleep. Just laughing. It was like summer camp, like all of us outside. I have a picture of that night too outside. We always in helmets, always in Kevlar vests. This was not, when I say slumber party, this is not pajamas and popcorn. And then we got the call. And the thing is, when the Blackhawks come back, it's very sudden, and it's very like, they're on their way, 2 minutes, everyone, quick runaway. So we never even barely got to say a proper goodbye and thank you for what was this all-nighter of awesome with all of these guys and Colonel Karcher, and all of a sudden it was like, bye, wee hours in the morning, bye, this was so awesome, stay in touch, love you guys, we're out. And he said after that, that's all everyone could talk about for the next couple days.
Wow.
They had the best time ever. It was so fun for them. They had never had a celebrity visit. They'd never had a VIP visit. All the visits were most of the time, unwelcome and resulting in, firefights and the like. And he said that the guys were just so tickled and so happy. And throughout his command, I think he had about 1,000 people under his watch over a few various bases. So he had invited others over. And so it was so special. And then 3 days later, those men drove over an IED, and Colonel Karcher lost his legs. And then on the way back from his medevac, which was in the thick of a dust storm, and so he couldn't helicopter out, and it was 9 hours to even get him across the city to get him out via ambulance ambulance. The men drove over another IED, and Sergeant Timothy David lost his life.
Oh.
And it was his 6th tour of duty, and he was younger than I was. And Colonel Karcher and I reunited for this book 15 years later, and it was absolutely incredible. It was such a blessing and such a gift to reunite with this extraordinary man who is a giant of faith, a hero of faith, and a hero in Christ's army. And he credits prayers with saving his life multiple times, Darren, because he died multiple times and had to be resuscitated multiple times. And in that story, this what I'm telling is the highlights. He had complete with, men jumping on him when the car exploded that originally had the IED buried in it. The stories of heroism and brotherhood are extraordinary. But he says, God didn't promise me eternal legs. He promised me eternal life. And he is a hilarious individual. He's the only person that can make me laugh and cry at the same time, telling me this story and the story of his survival and recovery, which took years and years and years, while also never complaining and being so grateful for a second chance at an earthly life with his family and his 3 daughters, And he went back and served, Darren. And that's the kind
He
of
did?
heroes that are in this book. And as you read, the POWs, both of them, after 6 and 5 years of torturous captivity, both of them came back to serve out full careers because their commitment to this country and their commitment to honor and how much they weren't victims, rose above any type of sort of myopic view of what they had gone through. These guys are just
Remarkable.
extraordinary.
No, your book, it is, I consider really a life-changing book. I read a lot of books for the podcast and preparing for this. And Emily, you should be so proud of this. It's just story after story. And I've heard you talk on other interviews about how you're honored to be the messenger for these stories. Tell me more about how did you decide on this story? How did you decide then to, jump in and be this messenger? Why?
You're right. I really characterize my position here at Fox and sort of in life with the platform I've been blessed to have around me, that I call myself a tiny messenger for the real angels around us and the real heroes around us and those who are working tirelessly day in and day out or representing tirelessly day in and day out service to others and commitment to protecting our freedoms or all the good works that are out there. So I take it so seriously. I can't imagine having a position like this and wasting it for self-gain or squandering it without being so appreciative of, even with you today, this is a perfect example, Darren, how honored I am to have the ear of your listeners and to hopefully steward that time correctly so I don't waste it, but in fact educate, inspire, inform. And to your point, if a life is changed in there, then my work is done. And so the concept behind this book, it was a collaboration. The short answer is it's a collaboration between me and Fox News and HarperCollins, of course. We have the Fox News book imprint. But it's also carrying on the legacy of my mom's life, work, and passion as a family historian, genealogist, and the legacy of my military family. Carrying forward all the work that my relatives have done to meticulously save all of the records and photographs and stories and letters home from my military family, from all of them back to World War I, and actually even really prior to that in Europe and the like. So I feel, this book has my mom's hands on it and those before her and our family, and serving as a messenger for the stories of faith in here, absolutely. And so again, it's sort of a few books in one, which I know I keep saying, but I hope it doesn't read like that. I mean, it's cohesive,
No.
But when you pull out the themes, there's pure history, and then there's all of the faith stuff, and then there's my family.
Yeah, and that's probably what I love about it. For those who have not read it yet, it has one of the sections, Global War on Terror, and then the second section, World War II, Korea and Vietnam, and then number 3, The War Comes Home, which, holy smokes. That's the other piece, and I've heard you talk about it. You write about the front lines. It's not just in battle; it's what happens after that. And so it reads like a history book, but also the stories are just so compelling. So the war comes home. By the way, how did you choose all these stories? I mean, it's got to just be daunting. How do you curate them?
Well, I had the honor of, most of the people in the book are in my community, and they're friends of mine. Morgan Ortegas, Doug Collins, Jessica Harris, Jeremiah Wilbur, the Bakers. I mean, they're my family and my friends.
Wow.
So the vast majority of the people in the book I am honored to know, and have invited to be a part of this, and it was a perfect fit. And I did so in collaborative conversations and exploring that, because faith is personal. So some of them, I said, look, I'm working on this. Is this a good fit for you? Do you have something like this that you'd want to share? Jeremiah is a perfect example where he and I go way back, good friends, and I am an ally for his nonprofit that he started, War Party Movement. But, I didn't know this faith story about him. So when he's like, yeah, I have something, and he says, and I've never shared it, and I trust only you to share it. That the weight of that and the honor of that to me is, I can't describe. But that's an example of how this came about. Jessica Harris, my good girlfriend for years, same thing. I'm an ally for her nonprofit that she started, her company, Canine Salute. And, again, is this a good fit for you? And she says, yeah. and here, let me share. I mean, it was beautiful. And then I'm also a close advocate for the National Veterans Museum and Memorial in Columbus, Ohio, and they were instrumental in securing the 2 POWs who have now become good friends of mine, as well as the Korean War veterans and Sergeant Enfinger, who was the Vietnam infantryman as well. So they helped me round out the crew for me. And then as you've read, a lot of it is my family members and stories. For example, my great Aunt Lou, who was a World War II U.S. Army nurse. All of the stuff in her chapter, those are her letters home. So it's her voice, right? But long
so special. Yeah, by the way, so quick time out. I got 6 minutes. I'm going to hit the mark for you. Okay.
Okay.
Does that work?
Yep.
Still at 9:30?
Yep.
Or 9:30 Mountain Time out here in Idaho.
Thank you.
Okay. By the way, just as an aside, in your book, an introduction, I believe, you talked about growing up, speaking of your family, on your bedroom wall, surrounded by photographs of F-117s, F-22s, B-2s, probably hung a poem by John Gillespie McGee Jr., High Flight. And that is, what a wonderful poem. Oh, I have slipped the surly bonds of earth. Last line, put out my hand and touch the face of God. I believe that was the basis for Peggy Noonan's speech she wrote for Ronald Reagan to commemorate the Challenger astronauts. What a powerful poem that is. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you for calling that out. That intro, man, that was the hardest chapter for me to write, obviously.
Why?
Because I knew, first of all, many people write the intro first, and I wasn't going to do that because, I needed to see what it became before I could create the introduction for the readers. And once I got done with the book, and it was so meaningful to me, it was my heart and soul is on every word and every page of that book.
I can tell.
So the intro, I just felt the weight of how do I cohesively, again, we talk about the multi-layers here. How do I cohesively grasp and convey that and pull in readers and let them know like what's about to happen? I felt, I wanted to be adequate. I wanted to be successful at that. And how do I let them know I'm the perfect tour guide for them in this journey? And I had these sort of seemingly disparate points, the high flight and growing up wanting to be a fighter pilot and doing ROTC and all the things, and faith and how do I weave that in? And mind you, the hardest thing is the word limit. Everything was a lot longer. The book was like 3 times longer. So how do I get all that in a short amount of, so that's why it was hard. And I hope I did an okay job. But
You nailed it. And it spoke to me too, because you talked about not being a fighter pilot. The only regret I have in life, is I never tried to become a Blue Angel. Every time I see Blue Angels, I think, Darren, you should have tried. So I'm 57. Maybe I still have a shot.
Maybe. That documentary on them is so great. Have you seen it?
It is. Believe me.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So good.
For sure. Emily, last couple of questions for you. What would you hope that the reader would think or learn from reading this incredible new book?
That they are never alone, and that the theme of all of these stories is that God is always, always with them. And then secondarily to that, as you and I sort of touched on, that there are heroes among us all over. There are caregivers to the catastrophically wounded. There are those battling ultimate sacrifice grief. There are those carrying around their service, having lost and buried brothers and sisters on the battlefield. And what all of that looks like, I hope that they come away with some history learned also, and that the best thing that they can do is share it. If it touched them in any way, to share the book, because I'm confident that if people read it, there will be at least one thing that will impact their heart forever, and I'm hoping that spreads. Truly, my prayer was that it enlarges His kingdom, and that I serve as that adequate messenger for the incredible voices, the extraordinary stories within.
Well said, and I'm going to be sharing it. Again, I just read the book, but I've got a lot of stocking stuffers where Under His Wings is going to be the gift. It's such a powerful, life-changing book. Emily, at the end of every podcast, I ask my guests, what is their I Dare You challenge for all of us? So to you, what would you dare us to try or do differently to live a better life? What do you think, Emily?
To be bold in faith, to not let go or let fear squander any opportunity and blessing that God has given us, whether it be, go for it, try it, whether it be calling and telling that person you love them, forgiveness, to be bold in generosity, to love radically, and to give of your time, and at a minimum just prayers for those who serve day in and day out, in uniform and out, for a greater cause.
Well, Emily, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Everyone, the name of the book is Under His Wings, How Faith on the Front Lines Has Protected American Troops. Emily, what spoke to me about this interview, one of the many things, was how you are using your platform for good. And whether you are on Fox News talking to millions, or you are in your vocation or your family, we all have that opportunity to do just that. Use your influence. God put us all here for a reason. So let's use our time and our days here, and let's make them count. And Emily, it's been an honor to be just a small part of helping you spread this message. Thanks so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much, Darren, for having me. And thank you for reading it, by the way. Like, that means the world to me. I'm always grateful for any time to talk about it, but the fact that you actually read it, that means the world to me, because I just want everyone to hear the stories within. It's not about me. It's about those voices and those humble giants and humble heroes within. So thank you. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Emily, thanks for being here.